I prepared something for you. Like remember we were talking about um, like you're learning more about lenses
Yeah,
and
yeah,
cameras and how like which lens to use when, and it's basically so you've been learning that for storyboarding, right? Like and just
yes, that's right. Yeah, I've been like the more recently over the past year. Really, I have done storyboarding in the past for my job, but never really thought of myself as like a storyboard artist. But recently, I think I've been, you know, getting more and more interest, like watching films, really analyzing films, and we started talking about it, and I've been doing studies of, you know, of films, just little thumbnails, just kind of trying to get like why they change lenses, what lens are using here, like how long is this shot, etc. So we started talking about it, and I know I was asking you questions, about the different effects and a bit more precision, really, because right now I can understand why they use them. But I think you were going to put together like a little handy guide. Is that correct?
not really a guide. It's just some examples. I found a bunch of free people, 3D people. So yeah, what I was thinking was more like just talking about the different effects that different lenses have,
Yeah.
and using those folks to illustrate the. So those are like free files that people use for like staging
Mm-hmm.
buildings and things like that when they're presenting architectural stuff usually.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get this. I just created a camera here, and the thing that the one thing that people always talk about when they're talking for lenses, especially for portraits, uh, is like long lenses are better for portrait, and they always end up going to where's my camera here? To a 45. So sorry, 80 millimeter, 85 millimeters is what most people consider a portrait lens nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And you get like the face kind of flattens a little bit. You can see a lot of both ears,
Yeah.
and like a ultra wide would be like a 11 millimeter lens. So
Mm-hmm.
with the same distance from the camera is on the same spot. I just changed the
Yeah.
focal length, and now I can see a lot more on the shot, right? So to get the same framing, I would have to zoom in more.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see like now I can barely see her ears.
Yeah.
So we tend to think that as camera distortion, as lens distortion, but that has more to do with the distance that the camera is than with the from the object than with the lens doing the barrel effect on the corners.
Mm-hmm.
Because like our eyes don't have a zoom, but we have like a focus ability, right?
For sure.
If I have on the same spot here, like if I have this on let's leave it around here, and let's do a screenshot of her face only.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, before I do the screenshots, I'm gonna turn off the ability to move the camera, and I'm just zooming in on the image itself, just so
Mm-hmm.
I get a more resolution, right? So I'm with the 11 millimeter. That's like as wide as you get, pretty much. And I'm gonna do a screenshot
Mm-hmm.
and have that on my other monitor here. And now I'm gonna just zoom out of the image. The camera didn't move, and I'm gonna enable. I don't need. Just gonna change here to 85. That's what I had before, and there is virtually no difference in distortion.
Mm-hmm.
So the 11 millimeters, if it's on this exact same position, the distortion on the face is about the same.
Yeah.
What changes is how close you are. Like if you are this close to an object, you're not going to be able to see it. Like it's a point of view more than a lens distortion. The the Y doesn't change the results, right? Like the result is you're using an 11 millimeter, keeping the same frame, you're gonna get the distortion. But like understanding the distortion is not coming from the lens, but from the proximity, kind of changes how we feel a little bit about when like what to choose, because if you're having an intimate moment with somebody, and you're like you really want to put that on the screen, like you want to the whoever's watching to feel like they're next to the person, and you use a 85 millimeter, you're kind of diminishing that feeling, even if you're like really close like this. And that's what most movies do. They have like a little bit of a zoom, mostly because of staging around, right? Like you can get away with only staging behind the character if you have if you're cropped in a little bit. If you're using a wide, I don't even need to go like 11. Like that was just let's do 25. Like, and you have this, like there's a lot more of background to feel, to have the same. But the distortion that you see on her now, it's more aligned to the distortion I would see on her if I was next to her, like this close to her, at the same distance that the camera is. So I have a feeling that the distance from the camera, if you think about it, like if you're gonna have a mountain on the background and you want it to feel far away, you need it to be like the entire mountain needs to be on the shot, you're gonna use a long lens from far away, from where you expect the people to feel like they're watching it from. Even though your eyes are much wider than a zoom lens, the distortion is gonna be the same, and the feeling of proximity, because we have the ability to focus on something and kind of everything around kind of just blurs. And that's why we kind of like sometimes some things look bigger in life, and then you get your phone, you take a picture and to show somebody, and it's like, oh, it looked way bigger in person, right? Like that's
for sure.
Yeah, it happens quite a lot.
So you prefer using a wide and then pushing in for a close up?
Yeah, but again, with the downfall, or so
I guess it depends, because not all shots want to feel. You don't want to feel like you're in somebody's like point of view all the time, right? So a film might be trying to convey a different message, in which case, like, an 85 mil might work better.
Well, the example that I was talking about was more like an intimate moment, right? Like if you want to feel like you're next to the person,
for sure,
like Baby Reindeer that we were talking about before. If you want to see like you're being watched from far away, a zoom lens is better for that. Like because then it kind of gives the compression that 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 being far away would give. A quick thing one thing that I really like to do is I'm gonna get my camera here, and I'm gonna animate it. So on frame 0 is gonna be where it is. So and then I'm just gonna zoom out. But sorry, forgot to move my timeline. And then on frame 90, I want to be far away, but I'm changing the lens at the same time.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is like putting a very long zoom lens, like a 600 here. And sorry, I forgot to do that on the first part there. So 30. Okay, so when I play this now, you see that nothing, like you see the background compressing and her face getting flat. As I go to wide angle, her face kind of distorts towards the camera, and the background, you see, it reveals more of the background. Actually, let me turn this on here. I have just gonna put a bunch of people on the back here so we can see better.
Yeah,
what's happening. So, like, it's a lot of people behind her. Like when we get to to the wide angle really close, we can only see a few of those, right? And then the camera is getting further away and further away with more zoom and more zoom. And you see looking more and more like they're closer to her than they are in real life. Like this looks like they're right next to her. They're about the
Yeah.
same size. And this looks like they're way far, like way on the back there, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
so that like the two things to take in consideration is like how much of the background is going to be visible and how big the elements, like if you want something next to a person to look gigantic, a longer lens is going to like keep and the person is closer to the camera than the object in front of them, a longer lens is going to do that better for you.
Yeah.
Right, so
That's how they felt. I remember watching the making of Stand By Me. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, but there's a point where the boys are running away on a train track, running away from a train, and they use that exact technique to make it feel like the train was really close behind them, where in reality, like, because it was a real train and they were on a bridge and they wanted to cut, but yeah, they used that to make it feel it was right behind. So
and that's
cool.
That's why a lot of action movies with people that cannot fight use longer lenses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it looks like the punches are connecting a little bit more. But like when you get like Jackie Chan or somebody who can actually fight, then they prefer using wide angle because they know like they're actually doing the moves and they want you to see the entire movement, right? Because it's not that easy to pull it off. Like they work their whole lives to learn how to do something. They better show it. So another cool thing about like long lenses versus short lenses, I'm just gonna stagger those people here. So they're virtually pretty far from each other. And let me just put those two together here. Way on the back there. I'm gonna create another camera because that one is animated already. I don't want to lose it. So those people are pretty far from each other, right? Now let's say that they are in New York on the Broadway, walking by, and there is a government order that nobody can leave their place. Everybody needs to stay inside. It's just fiction.
I can't imagine now. It sounds horrible.
It's just fiction. And you're a photographer.
Yeah.
And you get a call from two different newspapers. One newspaper is writing an article talking about how nobody is respecting the rules and everybody's out on the streets. So we go to Broadway, where you know that it's the busiest street in New York, and you say like, okay, there is some people, but they're not like, they're way further apart than 6 foot.
Yeah,
they're kind of following the rules, but it's like more people than should be. But still, like, it's not gonna be. I'm not gonna be able to sell this photo because, like, if I take this photo, it's like, okay, there is people, but they're pretty far apart, right? But then, let me see what camera I have here. So I have a 50mm now. Let's go ultra wide here. Like, even worse, right? Like, everybody looks even further apart now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna prove my point here. Now, if I frame it from the front, people are already more on top of each other. So, okay, more of a chance of getting the shots that represents the article. Now let's put like a 200mm lens here and move back a little bit. Looks like they're on top of each other, right? Like, looks like they're really close to each other. Now let's put a 600mm.
You bastard. Get inside.
Right? So now, like, I take this picture with New York on the back, and I send, and like, I sell day one.
Yeah.
But I took the picture and I'm about to send them, I'm like, this is great, got my shots, and I got an email. As I'm looking at my phone, I got an email from a competitor newspaper asking for the same picture, but they're writing an article saying that New York is desert. Nobody's on the streets. Everybody's respecting, and it feels like a ghost town. So I'm like, oh no, what do I do now? So instead of taking the picture from the sidewalk, I moved to the center of the street. So there's already a little bit more space there.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of using my 600 millimeters, I use a 20 millimeters. And I'm on this angle, but on the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And there is people on both sides of the street. Let's put some people here. But there's so much more empty frame and buildings on the back than there are people on the shots that I might actually get away with a ultra wide. Let's do go back to my 11 millimeter.
Trust
It's
the
like,
11.
oh my God. Yeah, there's
New
nobody
York
in
is
New York.
dead.
Yeah, remember how busy those streets are? There's like only 6 people there now. So you can manipulate how people feel about something just by choosing position and the lens itself, right? And so we spoke about like how how the proximity, like choosing a lens that allows you to be as close to the subject as you intend the spectator to feel like they are. I think that's number one on choosing lens. Compression is pretty much this. How like do you want a room to feel full? A longer lens is going to compress things and make like there is more people there than there is. So if you don't have enough extras, or if you don't, or for any reason, right? Like you want the feeling of being more claustrophobic. There's everybody's there, right? And I learned that the hard way. Like we were shooting, because I'm a sucker for wide angles. I love wide angles lens, and so we were shooting a short film, and I had a wide angle on my camera. My friend had a longer lens, and the other guy had an even longer lens, and we were shooting the same shots from 3 different cameras. And I couldn't wait to look at the shots afterwards. And I thought, because it was like an action sequence, I thought that my shots were going to look better because I had like I always relate wide angle with action. And then for that sequence, my shots like they looked horrible because it looked like we only had like 6 people standing around. And on the other guy's camera that had longer lens, it looked like, people were walking in front of the camera and blocking the view. It looked like a very busy environment. And I was like, okay, this is the one we got to use.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But then when we get to the final fight, where it's a 101, it's like two people fight each other and there's nobody standing around. Now the wide angle makes more sense because they're doing acrobatic moves on the fight, and the wide angles allows you to see the entire movement happening. And by placing the camera lower, you also get the sensation that the jumps are going higher because there is more empty space between the ground and the guy that's jumping. So so I wasn't wrong about action looking better on a wide angle. But if you want to sell that the room is busy and full of people, the longer lens is better for that. So it was a bit of like learning on the as you do kind of thing.
Yeah, not every rule is there to be broken a little bit, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah, and I was drawing before we started the call to do another example. It looks silly as hell. So
beautiful.
Because the third thing to consider is the sensation of speed.
That's Adobe Fill, right?
No, it's just like grease pencil in Blender and some free assets too. So I also related. Let me turn off this thing here. Sorry, blanked out there. Okay, so I also always related fast movements with wide angle, and this is another thing that I got wrong before. Where let me see what camera I have here now. So this 38. Let's go to the 11, right? Like that has been the one that I've been using. So I got this guy going on the motorcycle and lots of trees going by. So everything looks kind of far, And if you follow one tree, especially, let me hide this one because it's kind of getting in the way. So if you follow this tree, it takes like a whole 10 seconds for that tree to get out of the shot. So if you're filming somebody and you're following somebody with the camera and you have an ultra wide, it's not going to feel fast because elements are going to take forever to take from one side to the screen to the next. Now, if I use, let's get my camera again, and let's go to extreme, like 200, and then zoom out. So trying to keep the character about the same size on the frame. Now the tree, like it feels a lot faster because the tree is entering the screen and leaving at the same, like within seconds. It's just like So when you're following somebody sideways or filming somebody sideways, the longer lens is way better to represent speed. And that was a shock for me when I learned that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because I was used to always film, because like using action cameras and GoPros and things like that, I'm more used to this angle, right? And on this angle is actually the opposite. So if you're following somebody from the back or front, and you have a longer lens, let me go back here to the. So let's do long first.
Did you hear those real life effects outside of the? I organized that guy to come by here.
So if I play it now with a 200, it doesn't look too fast because trees, because of the compression, the trees are staying on the. Let me go a little bit sideways just to give it a fair chance, but the trees are taking not just they're taking a long time to cross the screen, because they're not, but they're staying relative the same size all the way across. So it doesn't feel that fast because like they're entering the screen, they feel a certain size, and then they leave the screen, they're about the same size. Now, let's go back to the 11. Woo, and get about the same framing, like same size, keeping the character same size there. Now, like, it's not as dramatic as the sideways one, but because the trees start small on the screen and they grow before they leave, it feels like you're in there with him. It feels like an action shots now.
For sure.
And especially if you get a lower angle, right? Like it really feels like there's lots of speed in there.
Totally.
So even like, so there is no rule for anything, right? Like it's very case dependent, because you might ask a director of photography, like, what lens do I use to get to make my shot look faster? And he doesn't know how your shot look. So whatever he visualized first is going to be the answer that he's going to give. And maybe he's going to visualize the shot like this and give you the wrong answer because you're planning on shooting this, right? So it's very dependent on the moments, and it's like only trying and experimenting with that we learn. But so those are kind of like, this one, like those three examples I like because there are things that intuitive I was wrong, and then I had to experiment with it to actually learn that I was wrong and understand how it actually works. And I'm not even getting to depth of field. That's another thing that also changes a lot your lens choices, because
for sure.
If I go back to my people file here, actually, let's create a little box here, because like I keep talking about millimeters, right? But for most people, like for people who are not used to camera terms, it's easier to visualize things as field of view. And the millimeters are based on a full-size sensor. So a camera sensor that's a bit more expensive, but it's the. So let's say this is the field of view of my camera. I'm going to create another box to be the camera here. So if this is my camera and this is the field of view of the lens, what does that actually mean? So when you look here, if this is the size of the sensor, like imagine this is the actual lens. This is the glass of the lens. And the light is coming in. This is actually flipping somewhere in there.
Yeah. I remember science class.
Yeah, so it's actually something more like this, where left and right kind of flip.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's up and down. I think it's up and down the flip, not left and right. But well, that looks horrible. But you get it. I'm gonna do it without flipping because
yeah.
Actually, maybe we're okay. I'm getting carried away here.
This is an art podcast, not a science podcast.
There we go.
But that's very impressive. Well done.
So this is the size of my camera sensor, and this is the size of the lens. So when they say like 11 millimeters, right, like or 200 millimeters, it's kind of a subjective thing, right? Because like before I was like, is that like in front of the camera? Like what that actually means is when at the point that the light hits the lens and it forms this cone to project the picture at the sensor, if I have an 11 millimeters, this is going to be a lot closer, right? So by this being closer, the closer this is, you see how like if I had like a 0 millimeter one, I would have a 180 field of view, so it's a straight line. If I have a 200 millimeter, actually, let me. Another box. I need another box. There you go. Let's say this is the actual end of the lens. So if this is the end of the lens, like this is the source, like where my subject, right, like where I'm capturing the light. If this is like very far away, like in case of like a 200 millimeter lens, you see that like if you continue those lines, it's going to be a very narrow field of view, right? Like now, and same with the what the hell is happening? And the opposite with a wide angle, right? Like the closer this is, if you continue those lines, the wider
for sure
it is. So that's pretty much like this would be like a 9 millimeter or whatever lens, and this would be like a 200 millimeter. So the distance where the focal point starts to project, I think has more to do with the distance between where it crosses to the sensor, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the millimeters that they're being counted. But that's what it changes. That's how it changes that. And based on this distance too, so with a shorter lens, with a 11 millimeters, this inner triangle is a lot smaller. And therefore, the focal distance, it's a lot closer. Like the minimum focal distance is a lot closer. So for me to have something out of focus on the background, my subject has to be a lot closer to the lens. Now, so if this, like in the case, so this is a lot bigger triangle. Now I can have like the subject can be a lot further and we still see the background blurred with the same aperture. So yeah, there's a lot more.
No, sure. We can like take it like every week and do a little bit. But yeah, this all makes sense. And I know obviously you use different kind of, there's different like glass, right? Different kind of prisms like within like the lens to kind of like to change, which helps change like the length, I guess. Is that correct?
So there is like they talk about spherical elements and things like that. That's more like for sharpness and image quality in general.
Oh yeah. Sorry, you're right. The kind of how much it kind of like distorts on the edge around the edges, right?
Yeah. So that's like the barrel effect that you get on the corners you can reduce by having different glass elements there.
Yes. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah, and but the two main things that you look on when you're like if you're choosing a lens is the maximum aperture. So it's like the bigger the aperture, the smaller the number. So if, like 1.4 used to be the biggest one that you could get. So it's like it opens quite a lot. So you can they also call those fast lenses because you can open the aperture so much, you allow so much light in, you can use a faster shutter on the picture. So for sports, usually you choose a lens with a larger aperture because you want to freeze the frame a little bit more without getting blurry. So they say that's why they call it fast lens. But so a fast lens is like a wide aperture lens. It's like a big aperture lens. So 1.4, now they have like 1.2 is the gold standard, and I think 1.2 is kind of the larger aperture you can get that still has autofocus on. I have a 0.9, so it's like lens, but there's no autofocus, so it's manual focus, and the amount of things in focus is so small that you're gonna, like if you use for a portrait, you're gonna get the nose blurred and the eyes on focus. So it's kind of like useless for a lot of things, right? Like and that's the advantage and disadvantage as well of using a large aperture is you get like the nice blurry backgrounds that we all like with a large aperture, but also it's way harder to focus. So if you have two subjects and you want both to be on focus, you can't use a large aperture. You got to crank that up a little bit, so you're using a smaller aperture, and the smaller the physical size of the aperture, the more things you can have in focus at the same time, but the less background focus you're going to have, right? So it kind of expands the amount of things that can be in focus at the same time. So, but like a nice expensive lens that has a large aperture, you can always crank it up, right? Like you can change on the settings and have it close down the aperture a lot and have that effect. But a cheap lens that don't have a big aperture, you can never go up, like you can never open more. So when buying, actually, like having large aperture is a great thing to consider when buying a lens, because it gives you more versatility, but it's not always that you're going to use that.
Damn, son. That's some good shit.
Yeah. So was it clear, like when I was showing?
Yeah, no, that was really good. I liked all of those. Like, especially, I've always been someone who learns, like a bit of a visual learner. I think just seeing it in action, like, and how I can put that into practice as well into my boards. But yeah, it's like, it's just like we said earlier, kind of like picking up, we have like strengths, obviously, like my strength is like, as a draftsman, drawing a lot, but now it's trying to like learn this new skill, that we can kind of like slowly combine. Yeah. So it's like almost not starting from the beginning, but you definitely like setting like into a new kind of a new path of learning, which is the exciting part about art, right? In general, it's like,
and it's funny because like I'm a 3D character artist, you being like a character designer for a while, and we're both moving towards storytelling from different sides of the spectrum, right? So
it's human nature. That's why,
but it's funny because like all this lens thing that we're talking about now has nothing to do with character modeling. Like that's just a hobby, right? Like it's because I like action sports and I like filming action sports and like just putting those things together, just it gives me. I think that's one of the things that I learned the most is like the more things I do out of art, the more I'm prepared to do art, because all this knowledge that feels like futile when I'm acquiring, it always shows up in a way when I'm doing something, right? Like just understanding simple things, like even like Pavel, when we were like working together on Builder Brothers, like he had such extensive knowledge about car suspensions that like just because he likes RCs and he has a Jeep and he understands about those, like, so when a model shows up that the suspension doesn't seem like it works, he freaks out and like he makes it better. So it and it's like has nothing to do with modeling, it's like with real life experience, right? So
it's so true. Yeah, we do. Yeah, that's so spot on. We pick up lots of like you do, but I know like you've spoke about a lot of things where I'm like, how does he know that? Well, how and why? But you're right. It's kind of, we build up this like knowledge and see the world differently. Like, as artists, that's what's super cool. I mean, I think my knowledge isn't or isn't necessarily in like car suspension, but I do. Like it's in human form and human anatomy. I look at every single person. They must think I'm like a right weirdo, but I always look at people in the street and like
I'm such a weirdo, man.
Yeah, it's like I've got like a window here that every morning I just
and binoculars.
Not quite the binoculars, but I've got them ordered. They should be arriving soon. I just sit and. There's some traffic lights and people are just walking by and like, they're there for about like 20 seconds and I've got the sketchbook and I'm just trying to quickly get their gestures down.
Oh man, that's a really crazy
cool way to open up and, start the day without sitting on my desk, without being on the computer. I'm like, just getting some pencil on some paper. And it's like such a, it really kind of sets me up in the right way. So, and obviously, I do a lot of life drawing, but that's like almost like a mini life drawing where you're just keeping yourself sharp, keeping yourself like loose and going. And
I think, and also nobody's expecting you to do that. Like that's something that you're doing because you want to improve, I think that's the one thing, like even like if the industry collapses the way we expect,
we're going to collapse it by becoming, tattoo artists, all of us.
No, man, like I think the people who are going to survive are the people who do art despite of work, not just because of work, right? Like when if you only do art when somebody's expecting that out of you, I don't think you have what it takes to survive the dry spell that's coming, like that's here now. So
well, and that's true. I mean, I do know a lot of, I can see what you mean, but I know a lot of artists who kind of only work for work and they're still amazing, So there are some who are like, like
but
family commitments, things. There are sometimes things that like happen, and I know artists who, I agree. Like you need to have that drive that is going to last for the next 20 years for sure.
But like if you don't ever do personal art, and you get, let's say, like we all get lose our jobs now, and it's going to be like 3 years until they start hiring again. You're going to have to do something else, and nothing, like we all are going to have to get other jobs, right? And then let's say you luck out and you get a job that pays the exact same pay that you were making as an artist, you get as electrician or whatever, and your day ends earlier because usually, like, I don't know, construction work starts early and ends early, so now you're home at 3, and you still have the whole day in front of you to do other things. If you keep the same mentality and you don't ever do art out of work, and you're not doing art at work,
I see. Yeah,
it's gonna, the 3 years are gonna go by, and you're not gonna come back.
Yeah, for sure.
So and
okay, I see what you mean. Yeah,
or you're gonna come back at a worse level than you were when you left. And some people that picked up like Uber driving or anything and kept doing art on their spare time, because they do art because that's what they like. It's not because they're being paid. By the time industry starts hiring again, they're going to have a way better portfolio. They're going to be, in a better position to be hired. So that's what I think. Like, if like now anybody who's not doing any kind of independent work, it's going to suffer the consequences on the following years, because I don't know, man. Last year I was expecting, I was like, okay, I think by June or July they're going to be hiring again. Studios and like, I did get like 1 or 2 calls, but I don't think studios are ramping up. I think it's just like some odd,
production. Well, I think you're right about about that personal work, and we speak a lot about this, and perhaps I know we've been running for a while. Maybe the next we should maybe do a show and tell. I know we were as what original plan, but this has been just organic. But it's I think we should kind of show the work that we've been doing on next time, kind of talk about our projects, and because I have some funny. I want to show the amount of unfinished projects that I have, almost as a lesson to myself, to be like, you got to finish these, and I'm holding myself accountable. Like I said at the start, I want to be like, every week I want to be like, okay, I've moved this forward and I've finished something, because I think that's something I've forgotten how to do.
True.
So I'm hoping this is going to help,
Yeah, we need a bullet point list before we start, because we can go forever talking about whatever is the first thing we start. We can go for hours.
For sure.